Hey there, how's it going? My name is Christian Sakamoto with Plan Your Federal Retirement. Back with another video on health insurance. I wanted to talk about FEHB. From the outside looking in, we always say this, it's probably the number one benefit that you have as a federal employee. I was looking at an article online. It was really giving praise for FEHB, rightfully so. Wanted to cover some of those details that this article talked about, but I also want to talk about some key points, some critical concepts to be paying attention to in order to keep health insurance in retirement, and more specifically, things to be looking at on that retirement application itself for keeping that health insurance. So number one, it talked about that you get to retain the benefit. So we'll talk about this in a little bit. What are the rules to keep FEHB in retirement? So just the fact that you get to retain it, but also that you have that consistency of coverage. So it's not a watered down version of FEHB when you go to retirement. You have all those same plans that you get to choose from, which that's another good point, that you have the flexibility of the different plan selection. Depending on your health insurance needs, or maybe you're in a part of the country where a lot of doctors or your doctor that you like accepts one coverage but not the other, you get to choose which plan makes the most sense for your family or for yourself. You also have the fact that the government has the premium payment that they're going to pay roughly 72% of those premiums, not only while you're working, but in retirement as well. So you're only responsible for roughly 28% of the costs for FEHB in retirement, which is great. It talks about how it coordinates really well with Medicare. So we've talked about this before, where your coverage that you have with FEHB really dovetails nicely with Medicare Parts A and B, and they're really designed to be put together and be used together once you're eligible for Medicare Part B. You can watch our other videos where we talk about some of those core reasons why. They just really coordinate very well together. So again, in general, this article did a good job talking about those highlights relating to FEHB in retirement. So the first things I want to talk about is, what are those rules in order for you as a federal employee need to meet in order to keep FEHB in retirement? So number one, in order for you to keep health insurance as a federal employee in a retirement, you have to retire with the eligibility of an immediate retirement. So what are those rules of an eligibility for an immediate retirement? Number one, retiring with your minimum retirement age with 30 years of service, retiring at age 60, and 20 years of service, or age 62 with 5 years of service. This would be your regular FERS. If your special provisions, it's even different. This would be your regular FERS. You also have the option to retire with your minimum retirement age and 10 years of service. If you retire with your MRA with 10 years of service, it's possible if you turn your pension on that you'll have a penalty associated with your pension. We want to try to avoid that, but if you did retire with an MRA in 10, you'll at least be eligible to keep your health insurance into retirement, that FEHB. This is all regular FERS. You also have, under special provisions, a different set of rules to retire with the eligibility for an immediate retirement. That, of course, would be retiring with age 50 with 20 years of service, or any age with 25 years of service. That would be your special provisions. So again, number one, you got to retire with the eligibility of an immediate retirement. Another one, if we're trying to avoid that penalty, by the way, if we have an MRA in 10 retirement, is we can postpone retiring until we're eligible to meet one of these other rules. So for example, you're age 59 and you've got 20 years of service, you could postpone starting your pension until age 60, because by age 60, you'll have 20 years of service. So just a little thought there. By postponing temporarily for that 1 year, though, you wouldn't have health insurance. You also wouldn't have your pension. Number two, the second rule in order to keep FEHB into retirement is you have to be in FEHB for the last 5 years prior to separating from service. Most of the time, this is going to be very common that you would be in FEHB. TRICARE also counts for those 5-year eligibility rules. Some exceptions, some cases where this might not be the case would be if maybe you're married and your spouse is covered under a different plan, and maybe their insurance coverage that they have that's not the federal government happens to be cheaper, so you're not in FEHB. Well, just know that if you don't have FEHB for the last 5 years prior to separating from service, that you won't get to keep FEHB into retirement. Another critical concept here with number 2 is OPM put out a benefit administration letter, a BAL, in 2022, which amended one that put in 2014, having to do with a healthy retirement application. And in that healthy retirement application, BAL that was put out, it talked about the importance of that 5-year history of FEHB. That specifically, I'll quote it, it says, the single most common error found in retirement packages is failure to document the 5 years of coverage. So if we know that, this is something that we can equip ourselves saying, okay, what's our proof going into retirement? So we have a speedy processing of our retirement application when it comes from OPM, so we get our pension checks that much sooner. The acceptable forms of documentation for OPM for FEHB 5 years before retirement would be the SF 2809 or other enrollment forms, SF 2810. Other would be history reports from online enrollments that both show the old plan and the new plan. Could be copies or screenshots of other documentation from online enrollments. You could be showing evidence of coverage as a family member under their FEHB. So if you had a spouse that was also a federal employee and they're in FEHB and you're covered under theirs, that proof in their plan counts for your eligibility in your FEHB enrollment. Also a signed memorandum from the agency detailing a continuous coverage of the employee to prove that 5-year requirement of that retirement date as well. Also evidence of TRICARE. So I mentioned TRICARE earlier. So that's really the critical concept here. We know that we need proof of FEHB, so if we can be on top of that prior to filling out that retirement application, just to have a speedier application process. This is directly from OPM as the single most common error found in retirement applications, of course, being the lack of that 5 years of proof of FEHB. So now I'm going to talk about the rules for your spouse to keep FEHB in retirement, and God forbid if you passed away. So spouse. The first rule for your spouse to keep the FEHB coverage is they have to be in FEHB at the time that you passed away. They have to be in FEHB at the time that you passed away. So they can't be on their own plan. They can't, plan to enroll in the upcoming open season. Nope, they have to be in FEHB at the time that you passed away. And the second rule for them as a spouse to keep FEHB if you passed away would be they have to be left with a survivor benefit. As you know, with those survivor benefits, you either have the full survivor benefit, which is 50%, or you have the partial survivor benefit, which is 25%. So one of those two will work. They just have to be left with a survivor benefit in order to keep FEHB if you passed away. So hopefully you found this information helpful. If you have more questions related to FEHB or your federal retirement in general, feel free to pick up the phone. Give us a call. We have a phone line dedicated to answering your questions. We'll leave that number right here on the screen and give us a call. Who knows, maybe it'll be featured in an upcoming video. And until next time, happy planning.